with pretty high tide right now, and this is what it's been looking like all day. Take a look at this video from earlier. You could see those choppy waters were happening all day today. A lot of people coming out here in Brevard County to check out the surf and to take their own pictures and just see it for themselves. And she was one of those people who came out here today.
Thought that the waves would be a little bit bigger, but you know, the wind is crazy, how dark it is, how many people are out here too is fascinating. Yeah. You did not think that there would be people out here right now.
Well, finally, at 11 o'clock, there are not people out here right now except for us. Again, that wind's still picking up. And also, because of the worsening weather conditions here, as you know, Uber was offering free rides to people who are going to shelters. They are suspending those free rides at midnight here in Brevard County because of those worsening conditions, saying that they will continue those rides and continue service when the weather gets a little bit better. For now, we are live in Brevard County. Lyra Greenberg, Fox 35 News. Sending it back to you guys.
Lara, thank you. Stay safe out there. Orange County giving an update from its Emergency Operations Center. Mayor Jerry Deming is giving the latest information about Dorian, announcing that Orange County government will be closed for normal business tomorrow. He says they're keeping a very close eye on this storm.
While we hope the impact from the storm will be minimal, we must continue to prepare, as this storm is extremely dangerous and its path is, at this time, really uncertain. We hope for the best, but we must plan for the worst.
The mayor saying 150 people have already checked into the county shelters.
Several County issuing voluntary evacuations for anyone in mobile homes, low-lying areas, and flood zones. Shelters have been open at schools across the county, and the Sanford Airport closed at 11 o'clock tonight.
And in Osceola County, a curfew will go into effect from tomorrow at 11 p.m. to Wednesday at 6 a.m. The county has also issued a voluntary evacuation for low-lying areas and mobile homes. The news station continues to monitor Hurricane Dorian around the clock, and coming up, it's not just the beaches that are worried about the storm.
No, some inland communities also fear that all the rain will lead to flooding. That story after the break. flights into the storm, helping forecasters like Glenn track the intensity of the hurricane. And tonight, some of Dorian's outer bands are already affecting the coast.
The news station's Heather Gustafson is live on Cocoa Beach tonight. And Heather, earlier we saw the wind whipping up a little bit. I'm sure it's the same way.
Wind, we saw maybe one lightning strike and rain on and off, but for the most part, weather out here on Cocoa Beach right by the pier is nice. It's just the waves and the ocean that you got to watch out for, and I made the rookie mistake. I got my socks wet in hour, 3 of hurricane watch, but it's because of the waves right now. You can see they go out so far. We're really not that close to the ocean right now. We get here thinking that this is just where the beach should be, and then the waves come flying up here. One rogue wave got me, went over my boots, and now my socks are wet. But take a look at this water out here, the choppy ocean. We got some video earlier in the night, the rain on and off throughout the night so far. We did see a couple stragglers, some locals out here, and some tourists who are out here for Labor Day weekend. But it seems that most everyone who was on the beach earlier tonight, they've gone back inside. They just wanted to take a look at these awesome waves. I mean, it is incredible to hear and see them, even out here in the dark. These are the biggest waves I've ever seen out here on the coast of Brevard County, and we can also hear them crashing against the pier. Cocoa Beach Pier closed for the night, but when you look up there, coming back out here live, all the TVs are on. They got sports coverage going, so we know that power is still on out here in Cocoa Beach for the time being. We're going to see if we see any more rain, any more lightning, but for now, it's just those loud waves crashing in and the wind. And look how high it's coming up. We're not even that close to the water. So this is what we've been dealing with, and this is what some of the danger is. As Glenn was talking about, the storm surge, it can come in really fast when that hurricane gets closer to us. Thankfully, not going to be as close as we originally thought, but anyone out here on the coast or by the beach, be careful. Again, rip currents, all of these things to think about. So really not a great idea to go out into the water. Not a good day for swimming. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio. For now, we're live in Brevard County. I'm Heather Gustafson, Fox 35 News.
Before we let you go, I have to roast you. You are a rookie. Letting your socks get wet, that is a huge no-no. How many times has that happened to us?
Never.
Huge mistake.
I've never let my socks get wet. No. But Heather's more brave than I was. See, I wasn't like traipsing in the ocean. I was standing on the beach.
Well, you know, I had my Crocs on.
We thought we were on the beach. Oh, God.
I knew she would
I
say
agree,
that.
Heather.
Hey, they're perfect for hurricane coverage, so knock it off. You'll want them later.
All right, Heather, thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Fox 35 Weather Authority with Chief Meteorologist Glenn Richards.
Keep the Crocs, all right? It looks... where it gets what I call heavy, and it's heavy on that side. Here's the rainfall forecast, again, right now showing, and I don't believe this has been shifted yet, so we're overlaying the official forecast track, but this rainfall will actually shift to the east when the new model run comes in. Still calling right now for some heavier showers along the coast, but overall, I'm expecting about 1 to 3 inches of rain. Here is an updated version of the local model, again, showing how much rain will come down. This one only showing, again, about 3 inches now along the coastline, and only about 1/2 of an inch to 1.5 inches. That's it. In Orlando, very little rain out to the west of Orlando. The storm surge is still expected to be high. Again, those numbers may come down with some new information from the local office, but right now we're going to keep it at 6 to 8 feet. Again, that would be for the entire length now of our east coast, all the way down towards Indian River County. Here's live radar. Again, the showers moving ashore. They will continue through the night. They will be picking up during the day tomorrow. Again, with this type of a setup, you just don't get thunderstorms. The upper atmosphere is too warm. There will be thunderstorms, but they'll actually form along the west coast of Florida. But for us, our upper level environment is just too moist, so we're not expecting that. But right now, some heavier showers currently moving through Meadowwoods and Kissimmee over the next 20 to 30 minutes, some bursts of wind, and with that also getting some wind gusts up to right around 35, 38 miles per hour. Charles and Luann, much more again locally with the wind and the rain. I'll have more of that, including a brand new 7-day forecast. Haven't seen that yet tonight. I'll have that too coming up.
And thanks so much. Well, for some people in the Bahamas, their homes are filling up with water. You can see items inside this home floating because there's so much water inside. One woman in Volusia County has not heard from some of her family members, and she says the flooding will make it really hard to rescue them.
It's nerve-wracking when you can't find or hear from your loved ones and you see the water raising. My sister is in a 2-story building in Queens Cove with about 8 more persons, and there's no way. The only way they could reach them right now is either by boat or jet skis or something like that. So I plead with my people with those phones that you guys would use it wisely. Get on it and repost. Keep on reposting so the right authority could get the phone numbers and the Defense Force people can get the address and pictures of where to go to before it's too late.
The storm is forecasted to pull away from the Bahamas early tomorrow. Well, coming up next on the news station, Disney announcing when all the parks are closing because of the storm. We'll break down the times.
Plus, Hurricane Dorian forcing some major closures here in Central Florida, including Orlando International. We're going to take you to the airport next.
pretty good punch, and it's tough driving. We don't recommend being on the roadways. It has some big downpours, and we're kind of adding to the rainfall totals. Luckily, we're missing the heaviest rain. That would be near the core and on the eastern side of the storm, but overnight, similar weather pattern with the storm near stationary and just each one of these feeder bands working through off and on during the overnight hours and into tomorrow morning. James has been watching that, and it's been one after another. We haven't had much in the way of severe weather, James.
We get the same distance of the feeder bands moving through, and we see some of them moving through right now. Fort Pierce and Vero Beach had one move through earlier. Now you're kind of in the clear for a little bit, but I see one here. Watch right there. That one's going to come towards possibly Fort Pierce, or maybe just south of there here as we go into the next say half an hour. They're moving very, very quickly. This one's starting to line up with the Palm Beach County coastline here from Jupiter to the Gardens and down to Palm Beach. The heaviest of it is just offshore Palm Beach at the moment, quickly moving south to north. This may come a little bit closer and graze Boynton Beach and Delray Beach there as we go into the overnight hours. What you can expect from these 40-plus mile-per-hour wind gusts are definitely possible with those. Again, we do have a slight tornado threat, but a lot of these haven't really spun up into anything, but just know it's a slight threat out there. Not like Irma when we were to the right side of the storm, and that was where all the tornadoes were. Now, here's what we can expect for wind gusts here going into West Palm. We've already really had them in the 40s here each time one of those feeder bands move through. It's a good 42, 45 or so mile-per-hour gust. So, like Steve said, there's not a big change in the overnight. It's about the same. You can see those wind gusts into the 40s. As we get into the morning and midday hours for tomorrow, we could bump that up into the 50s here and even into the early afternoon hours. Finally, late in the day, dinner time hour in West Palm, that is, things should quiet down. Boca, you're probably going to be a little bit sooner than that. Maybe even lunchtime, things will start to pull away and settle down there. As we get into Wellington, more of the same. I think we're going to have the 40s here, the low 40s through the overnight hours, and then you'll max out into the upper 40s for wind gusts, not sustained. These are wind gusts, and then we'll slowly taper off after that. Okeechobee, you're a little bit less, farther inland, but those cells have been making it all the way to the lake and even beyond that. Vero Beach, a different story here. We ramp it up even more. You'll be in the 60s for wind gusts as the storm will get a little bit closer to you. And notice we've pushed it later in time, too. We're talking mid-afternoon to even late afternoon into the dinner time hours. You'll finally start to calm down here as we get into the overnight hours tomorrow night. And then things will start to improve for all on Wednesday.
James, thank you as always. And Steve, Hurricane Dorian affecting air travel, of course, all over the place.
WPTV News Channel 5's Ann Sterling has an update now from the newsroom. Ann?
And Kelly, we know so many people had travel plans. This hurricane threatened our coast during a holiday weekend. I want to give you an update from Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. This was sent out just about 2 hours ago. This is on Twitter. And it says Broward County intends to resume airport operations tomorrow. That's on Tuesday, September 3rd, after 12 noon. Again, intends. The airport reopening will be confirmed at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So their best advice as this continues to go on is to call your airline to make sure. I want to get you an update on PBIA, our airport here, and not so certain with PBIA. We are closely monitoring Hurricane Dorian and working with the airlines to restore limited airline operations on 9/3. That's tomorrow, as soon as conditions safely permit. So again, the advice here for PBIA, if you do have a flight out or if you're trying to reschedule a flight out, is to call your airline to make sure. Back to you.
And thank you, all part of our ongoing coverage to keep you informed of the very latest on Dorian, no matter what it decides to do or what schedules it decides to play havoc with.
WPTV News Channel 5's Jason Grunauer is busy tracking the situation in Fort Pierce tonight. Jason?
Yes, and good evening. We moved a few blocks off of the water to show you that not only can we just kind of feel the light breeze, we can definitely hear it in the palm trees, but we wanted to show you how local businesses either are getting ready or have gotten ready here. A lot of them are already boarded up here. And then still others, they've taken down their awnings because the wind is expected to increase from what it is now even more tonight. Still others will be closed until further notice here. And then still others, they put up all of their sandbags just in case those floodwaters do come up here in Fort Pierce. There's just a little bit of storm damage that we're seeing, just a couple of branches down because of that wind. But we can tell you that Fort Pierce police, they've been busy. Not only have they been manning the bridges to the barrier island, which is under a mandatory evacuation, they said they would lock those down if wind speeds got to a certain point. They also tweeted out two fairly heartfelt stories. They said their first hurricane rescue on Twitter today, that was from a pit bull puppy. The owner couldn't take care of it anymore. The officer adopted it on the spot. Still another story, an elderly man needed help putting up his hurricane shutters. Like many of the businesses here downtown, they have those up. That officer who responded finished the job on the spot. A thank you being sent out to all of our first responders as we continue to wait for what Dorian throws at us next. For now, reporting live in downtown Fort Pierce, I'm Jason Grenauer, WPTV News Channel 5.
Love hearing those stories. Yeah, exactly. The personal touches are touching. Yeah, absolutely. Important. It's been a long day, long week for so many people watching and worrying about the path of the storm.
For more of that, WPTV News Channel 5's Ryan Hughes joins us with how it's all played out in one Treasure Coast city. Ryan?
Yeah, Michael and Kelly, so many people, as you can imagine, here in St. Lucie County, hoping that Dorian starts to move and then starts to turn off of our coast. But we are feeling the storm's effects here. We can tell you the wind has definitely picked up within the last half hour. And take a look at the water over here. This is at Jetty Park near the inlet. The water, the last time we spoke to you, was not coming up past these rocks. Now, the strong current coming up over onto the sidewalk and spraying us at time. Some of the main concerns here in St. Lucie County are flooding and, of course, that storm surge. A stellar sky over Fort Pierce Monday night as Hurricane Dorian's winds whipped through the palm trees. The powerful storm also churning up the Atlantic at Pebble Beach Park on North Hutchinson Island. At the nearby Home Depot, the National Guard stocking up on plywood and shoppers clearing out the batteries and snatching up last-minute supplies as Dorian's bands now on our doorstep.
We did see a lot of generators come out of the store today, a lot of D-cell batteries, flashlights, water, still gas cans.
Julian Cuff ventured out to Wawa, but the pumps are covered in plastic. He and many others watching and waiting, hoping Dorian stays away from the coast.
That's a wait-and-see guessing game right now.
That's what it really seems like. I mean, hopefully it's not bad at all. Hopefully it does really curve and we just get like the outer bands.
We boarded the house, the gas tanks are full. We got food and groceries in the fridge. So there was always a possibility that we might leave, depending on what was going on with the weather and the storm and how close it was going to come.
And here is another live look as those waves batter the rocks here at Jetty Park at the inlet area. Now, as of right now, there is no curfew in St. Lucie County, and we are told that county offices and schools are closed on Tuesday and on Wednesday. Sheriff's deputies are also standing guard at the bridges to the barrier islands. Right now, we are told they are keeping a close eye on those winds. Once they reach more than 50 miles per hour, they will lock them down and not let anybody over. That's the very latest. We are live in St. Lucie County. Ryan Hughes, WPTV, News Channel 5.
Ryan, thank you very much.
Back with more after this.
Just because we're super...
Hash browns, bacon...
Dorian down to 130 miles an hour, but near stationary over Grand Bahama, sitting there for the last 12 hours. And it actually hasn't moved much in the last 24 hours. It made landfall around this time last night on the eastern side of the island and then moved right across to near West End and Freeport and Lucaya and just slowly drifted north through the late afternoon. You can see that little track there as it works off the coast, getting very near Great Sail. Little key right there. You can see it on the map just north of Grand Bahama. And there is where it sits tonight, in the eye wall, and it just hasn't moved at all, hasn't budged at all. It has done a little bit of a kind of a circle. It's rotated around a center point during the evening, but it's ended up in the same spot it was around 7 and 8 o'clock tonight. So it just has not moved forward motion at all. We're on the western side of this storm. About 105 miles is directly east is the eye, the center point of the storm, and that has not changed all day long either, simply because it just hasn't moved. But it is forecast to start to lift toward the north-northwest overnight, slowly at first, and then eventually getting well around Walkers and some of the very tip of the northern islands of the Bahamas, and then working its way quickly up toward the Carolinas. It gets caught in some strong upper-level winds, and that's a steering flow for this out through later tomorrow, right through Friday and into Saturday once it gets into the North Atlantic. And there's a close-up view of that track. So sitting just on the northern tip of Grand Bahama, moving about 15, 20 miles in the next roughly 8 hours. And then after that, once it gets that forward momentum, really racing up the coast. And by this tomorrow night, it'll be north or very close to north of Vero Beach and then north of the Cape by early on Wednesday. And the model tracks, everything has come together for this storm. We have a storm that was expected to stall on the northern tip of Grand Bahama. We have the computer model tracks, none of them showing a landfall along East Coast Florida. They were at least one or two persistent in doing that in the last few days. That's now not happening. We just need that forward motion to start to kick in. It looked like it was starting earlier tonight, and the hurricane just ended up kind of rotating around a center point just north of the island. So very frustrating. And it is still expected to move north, but it's still going to take a little while. Now, we're getting the outer bands, and the weather overnight should not change very much at all. The gusty winds, some of our strongest wind gusts have been 40 to 45 miles an hour. One of the latest was Juneau, around 44 miles an hour. And we're along the beaches. It really drops off those winds as you head toward the lake, and we still have some heavy rain at times as one of these bands after another swings right down the coastline. Usually they land on the Treasure Coast and they work right down 95 and the Turnpike quickly. Every one of these little bands is moving about 30 to 40 miles an hour to the south. So some quick moving rains, gusty winds, and that's a story likely right into sunrise and into tomorrow morning too. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll bring you more coming up in a few minutes.
Thanks much.
While there's so much attention, obviously and necessarily paid to the winds of a hurricane, another major issue is always the storm surge.
WPTV News Channel 5 anchor John Shaman looks at how the concern about storm surge has been growing along our beachfronts.
We are alongside the Juneau Beach Pier as high tide is approaching, and as you can see, the ocean is churning underneath the pier, and it is starting to head towards the dunes. We're only about 15 to 20 steps from the dune line, and you can see right here is the dune line. And we talked to people along the pier earlier today who were here during high tide this morning, who said that during high tide, the ocean came all the way up to the dune, completely covering the beach. So we'll see what happens there. Another thing we've discovered tonight, unfortunately, sea turtle eggs have turned up everywhere along the shore. A lot of people concerned that the wind or the waves would disrupt the nests, and that is exactly what we're finding here along the pier. Again, squally weather throughout Juneau Beach and northern Palm Beach County for some of the evening hours. So we've come out in between the bands to bring you this report. So again, we're waiting for high tide, which is going to be overnight, late Monday into early Tuesday morning, and we're going to see if we get that 2 to 4 feet or even higher storm surge that some have predicted. In Juneau Beach, John Shaman, WPTV News Channel 5.
Video just in to the newsroom from the height of Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas. You may have seen this online already. Incredible video. A look at waves crashing up against the home of the Minister of Agriculture and Marine Resources. And that gentleman says that the water reached the windows of his home, which he said was a minimum of 20 feet off the ground. The inside of the home just inundated with floodwater.
So home on stilts, 20-foot plus storm surge. My
Right.
goodness. This look from, or at Hurricane Dorian from the Hurricanes Hunters. Video of the crew flying through the eye of this enormously powerful storm. Clear skies until the storm shows its strength with waves of water beating against the aircraft. You would see that in a moment right there. They're in the proverbial eye of the storm, monitoring its strength and intensity, which will be one for the record.
You just have to marvel at something that's so beautiful that can be so destructive.
It's well said. And again, we'll be talking about this for years. They've been talking about superstorms in the Atlantic. And Steve, you and I have talked about this. We had Irma, and now this one. And I'm sure those who dissect these storms after the fact are going to be writing about this one for a long, long, long time. A record breaker in the Atlantic Ocean. And we're only beginning to assess the damage and the heartbreak for those in the Bahamas.
We'll have more coverage right after this.
Thinking of selling your car? AutoNation has a number to show you. 7. Once we appraise your vehicle, that offer is guaranteed for 7 days. We'll...
Sure. Decades, potentially, to rebuild in some areas.
If you ever completely can.
Yeah, right. Like you were saying, Steve, there's such a charm about certain parts of the Bahamas in particular.
Yeah, the out islands of the Bahamas, they're just individual, beautiful islands, very quaint. They have an old English history. A lot of those, a lot of them were populated by loyalists who came down from the Carolinas, and it just has a real English charm. Man o' War and Hopetown and Elbow and Green Turtle, and a lot of Floridians here go over there and spend their summer break because it's so beautiful.
Steve, it's perhaps a bit early, but after Irma, scientists talked, you go to the weather conferences, we see a ferocious storm like this if we are looking at a period of increased intensity, it does beg the question, a hugely populated coastline of Florida and indeed of this country, the Bahamas, how we're going to be able to safeguard and really look at how we build and where we build or rebuild to try and guard against these in the future, because for the grace of God, this comes ashore right here.
Yeah, well, you have two options. You build higher or you move away from the coastline, and all the conferences that I've been to, I ask that question, and the answer is always, we're going to build higher. Because it's just very difficult. Someone is willing to take the risk to live in the coastline, and that just not is a viable solution. But so we build the seawalls in Miami Beach, and we start to reinforce the seawalls here, even in Palm Beach County and the Treasure Coast, and that'll continue. We'll just keep building seawalls and hold it back.
And rethink hurricane construction just as we did after Andrew, but new levels of hurricane strength and construction.
Yes, you know, and the downside to that, you can build a home that can withstand 160, 170 mile an hour winds. It's going to cost you $1 million.
Well, wasn't there that one home that was left standing in Mexico Beach?
There have been several.
That were, that looked like
there's one
they were almost untouched.
Galveston, Boulevard Peninsula. And those people went through Hurricane Rita around on the North Texas along the coastline, and they moved to the Galveston area, and they built this hurricane just fortress on the beach, and it was the only house that withstood the winds of I forget what that hurricane was, but it was a serious storm surge hurricane in the Galveston area about 10 to 15 years ago.
Panama City, Mexico Beach, there was a similar one there. A similar one there.
From Michael.
From Michael,
That's
exactly.
Right.
A question here on Facebook, and I think this is only natural because we've all been asking these questions and it keeps getting pushed back. So Sonia is wondering that could it, on its present everything, miss its opportunity to, there's still that kind of, well, is there anything that it could make it not move north?
Yeah, it could sit there. Yeah, absolutely. And miss, there are countless hurricanes I've covered here where I'll come out and I'll say, well, it's missed the trough and now it's continuing west. The problem this time is 100 miles off the coastline. All the forecast tracks and all the models insist that it's going to continue and to start lifting north, but until it happens, I'm not happy with I'm still watching it. Let's put it that way. Cautiously optimistic, but I want to see a hurricane move forward. I don't want to. It's been sitting over Grand Bahama for almost 24 hours. It's just absolute devastation.
Till it's not out of here, it's not out of here.
What'll make it move?
Well, the trough.
Oh, just that trough.
Yes, it's digging down, and it's still up around North Florida. We've been watching it on you look at it on the water vapor satellite loop, and it's digging south, and it is forecast to get a little farther south, and it just kind of picks up this hurricane and lifts it northwest in this case. But it is still expected to happen, and the trough is there. It just has to get a little farther south. And this is a big storm. It's all about momentum. So you've got this massive storm. It needs a little bit of a push first to get it going.
Steve, talk about, so many people have talked about computer models. All of us lay people try not to become mesmerized about them. We've had a lot of viewers call in about the intensity forecast, about computer models. Well, talk a little more about that, where it is, where it's going, and the reminders we need to all take away about the value, but also the limits of that kind of forecasting technology.
Well, we've kind of transitioned the last few years in talking about the probability of this and the uncertainty of that, because nothing is set in stone with hurricane forecasts, and it's our job to make the public, the viewer, understand that there is uncertainty in these forecasts. It's not always a set deal. The computer models, a lot of people think, oh, well, that's the track it's going to take. No, it's just guidance. It gives us an idea where it might go. And that's been the challenge the last few years. And the Hurricane Center gives us two important pieces of information. They tell us where the storm's going to be, and they tell us how strong it's going to be. They do an excellent job on the track forecast. The intensity forecasts are still very problematic. If you think back to this storm right here a week and a half ago, it was a messy, disorganized tropical storm over Barbados and St. Lucia, and most people were writing it off, and the computer models were writing it off as nothing. It turned into a 185-mile-an-hour hurricane.
A lot of people have also asked on social media, and I know you have to pay close attention to this until it is gone out of our area, but what else is out there as we approach the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season?
Yes, yeah, it is pretty busy, and the peak day unofficially is September 10th. but as I mentioned the other night on the newscast, that's not really the peak day for South Florida. We've had more hurricane landfalls in South Florida in the month of October, so our peak is October, obviously. But there is something that's come off the coast of Africa that I think is about an 80% chance. There's also something in the Gulf of Mexico that's pretty close, but that is expected to move north. It has about a 60% chance, I believe, right now of developing. But it doesn't appear to be a threat. And the one off Africa, there's still lots of room to watch.
Right. And 80% chance of developing, where it ends up going is way down the track.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, also, people, we bring them into our television home and into your weather center. Your final thoughts for you and your team. These are roller coasters for you all as well. We all live here. We love these communities.
We all have homes here.
Homes here. Talk about what it's been like for you this past week.
Well, the boss earlier tonight said, wow, this is really a challenge. But honestly, every hurricane has its challenges. This time, the challenges are within 100 miles, so it's very, very close to us. But there are always big decisions we have to make, whether we put up our shutters, whether we leave them off, whether it's going to turn, and whether it's not going to turn. And this one is no different than the others. Just don't like seeing a stationary hurricane 100 miles off the coast. It should start to move. Once it does, we're in better shape. But that's the one uncertainty right now.
We know you'll wake up a much happier man.
Yes.
See the start of March.
I've been talking about it all week.
The mobile app always has all the latest information, and also, of course, online, you can always get everything you need. We have another an hour of coverage coming up to take you until 1 a.m. doing hourly updates, and then we're going to resume our continuous coverage.
Yeah, and just one last thing. The weather